Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we're going to have a look at the latest from the live radar, run through the UKV, have a look at the precipitation and the temperature over the next 5 days. It is remaining fairly dry but fairly cold as well. Quite a chilly easterly wind is currently in, and that will continue throughout the most of the rest of this working week. It's going to feel cold, temperatures down into the mid-single digits, and the wind chill on top of that, making you feel like temperature down close towards freezing in some areas in the east. However, as we head into the weekend, as we'll see on the GFS, GM, ECMWF, and the ensembles, the easterly wind does get cut off, high pressure settles over the top of us, and it tries to move northwards. Now, this is the sort of play that we have been watching for a number of weeks now, with this high pressure pushing towards Greenland, and it's now looking highly likely that that does happen. What comes as a result of that high pressure blocking still is yet to be determined. As we'll see on the operational runs and the ensembles, majority of runs turn us colder once again towards the end of the weekend and start of next week. But it's how deep that cold is and how long it lasts is what we've got to decipher now. Pretty much all runs, as I said, do bring that colder air mass back in, potentially wintry showers, overnight frosts and generally cold conditions, but it's how cold and how long it does last will decide whether we see any proper winteriness with that, and whether it's whether it's a prolonged cold spell or just a couple of days of colder than average weather. So we'll have to see what those models do show in the second half of the video. So do remember, if you enjoy my videos, make sure to like and subscribe, and remember to follow me on Twitter as well, the link's in description. So if you start on the live radar, you can see that most areas at the moment, it is fairly dry, but there are some showers coming in. They are spreading quite far inland, but they are at their heaviest and most widespread in eastern and northeastern areas. Again, most of these are falling as rain, cold rain, maybe a bit of ice mixed in it, sleet, and maybe the isolated snowflakes, especially as you progress towards higher ground. But most, as I said, it is rain showers here. But the feel-like temperature is making it feel very cold, with the surface temperatures in around that 5 to 8 degree mark once again today. Shower activity will continue over the course of the rest of the day and could actually increase tonight into tomorrow. We could see some more prolonged areas of precipitation, and we could see more winteriness within those. Again, nothing significant at all, just perhaps a few flakes, as we have got quite a cold air mass, just the surface temperatures are slightly too mild for anything wintry. Now, if you put on the temperatures as of 11 a.m. as I'm recording this, again, you can see widely cold days, some isolated yellow patches, again, indicating temperatures struggling towards the high single digits, but most areas more towards the mid-single digits. And we can see those lighter blues, those are temperatures struggling to get much above freezing, really quite cold out there. And as I said, the feel-like temperature is making it feel even colder. We can actually put on that feel-like temperature. And again, especially in the east, with that easterly wind, it does feel really quite cold out there. You can see more widespread lighter blues indicating feel-like temperature close towards freezing in most areas. So it's really quite cold feeling out there. Actual temperatures, as I said, a good few degrees above freezing, but it does feel like it's a proper winter day out there, and it will continue to feel like that throughout the rest of this week. Now, if you do go over to the UKV and have a look at the precipitation and the temperature over the next few days, you can see those showers heading in at the moment, and they'll continue over the course of this evening, and they could actually pep up in a few places overnight tonight into tomorrow, and you can see into tomorrow afternoon as well. They do get more widespread and potentially heavier. Could be a bit of snowfall mixed in with that, a bit of winteriness. Again, we're not seeing too many pinks there, but a bit of evaporative cooling in the core of some of these showers. You could see some sort of wintry precipitation. As we head beyond that into Wednesday, those showers eventually clear westwards with the coldest air, but we continue to fill in cool or cold air in off the North Sea. Those showers continue all the way through Wednesday and Thursday for eventually dying out into Friday. We do see slightly milder air masses dropping in, but that introduces clearer skies under the higher pressure, and there could be more widespread frost. So it's the cold rest of the week. Showers around, but mostly dry for plenty of areas. Look at those upper air temperatures, very cold in many southern and eastern areas at the moment, and that will just continue through today into tomorrow, continue with these very cold air masses. Again, nothing ridiculously cold. If you want something like ice days and widespread snow, you need these upper air temperatures to get more towards the -8 to -10 region, which we're not seeing over the UK. It's in the near continent, but not reaching the UK. So that's why it is cold, but nothing bitterly cold. And as we head towards the end of the week, we still see those reasonably cold air masses drifting in before eventually do clear out into the Atlantic. And we go into a cool, but more average, slightly above average air mass. The surface temperatures, of course, will still make it feel cold, as we'll still see a bit of an inversion and overnight frosts. Again, if we put on those 2 metre max temperatures, you can see this afternoon widely sort of 5 to 8 degrees on the thermometer. Again, the feel-like temperature making it feel a lot colder than that. Overnight temperatures will drop away towards freezing, especially overnight. We've got clearer skies, and then into tomorrow afternoon, once again, 5 to 8 degrees. Pretty chilly, but nothing too bad. As we head into Wednesday, again, frosts in areas where we have clearer skies, especially through Scotland, maybe in the far south and southeast, but again, nothing too crazy. Before into Wednesday, once again, 5 to 8 degrees, but really quite cold in the far southeast there. You can see sort of 3 to 5 degrees, and the feel-like temperature will make it feel probably below freezing. So we've got very thick cloud and those areas of precipitation moving around, and that will make it feel really chilly there. Into Thursday, overnight temperatures not dropping away too much. Isolated pockets of below sort of 2 or 3 degrees, but most areas in the mid-single digits. But again, feeling cold. And then into Thursday afternoon, again, 5 to 8 degrees, maybe rising slightly towards 9 degrees in a few spots. And then finally into Friday, overnight frost once again into the morning, and then into the afternoon, maybe slightly higher, 8 to 10 degrees again, indicative of a slightly milder air mass, but it still is a chilly feel with still an easterly flow or northeasterly flow, just not quite as cold air drifting in. You can see, though, into Saturday, under the higher pressure, with that weakening easterly flow, many northern and western parts, even southwestern parts, will see quite a harsh frost. Further eastwards, we still got that easterly breeze mixing air, keep it feeling cold, but the temperature's still sort of 3 to 5 degrees. But anywhere sort of westwards of central England, you're going to be seeing those temperatures plummet well below freezing, -1 to -3 degrees there, or even -4 across parts of Northern Ireland, really quite cold into the start of the weekend. So if you do now have a look at the longer range models, which have been very much all over the place over the last few days, the last week in general, really. We've got the easterly wind in it at the moment, and most models forecasted this pretty well. Chilly and reasonably cold. However, as we get towards the end of the week, the high pressure sits more over the top of us, cuts off that easterly wind, and into the weekend, you can see it does move up towards Greenland, and a northerly wind starts to evolve. Now, all the models pretty much get to this position, starting to pull in that cold air mass from the north and northeast, but it's what happens to these lows out in northeast Canada and the North Atlantic. Other runs have different things happening here, and the latest GFS, the 6 o'clock run, has that northerly wind coming in, cold air pushing in, but those lows are defeating that block up towards Greenland. We see cold air for a time before southwesterlies push in, and look at that, we go quite mild and westerly, with Greenland seeing the return of the tropospheric polar vortex, a very temporary blocking feature there for perhaps 3 or 4 days before getting pushed away. Again, we're seeing this completely vary depending on each run. Some runs yesterday from the GFS, I think the 6 o'clock run last night, did something bitterly cold and blocked. This run brings in the very cold air just for a time. We see the -5 ice come in, the -10 just flirt with us before it gets pushed away by the Atlantic. There could be quite a big snow event on its leading edge, but it'll be cold for a couple of days. We could see some transient northerly winds there with the cold air just poised to our northeast, but we return to more Atlantic systems beyond that. So GFS does go cold, but only for a couple of days. Again, it goes towards that little cold spell, but nothing more than that. Nothing prolonged, nothing bitterly cold, nothing anywhere remotely close to something to the cold weather we saw earlier in the winter, and not even in the same category as a beat in the east or anything like that, which can happen, as I said, as a result of a sudden stratospheric warming. However, this is one run, and as I said, the 6 o'clock run last night was very cold and blocked, and this is why it's very difficult looking at these individual runs, as they are flip-flopping a lot. Now, the GFS has had really bad verification stats the last couple of weeks, where its model has not done particularly well outside of the sort of the 5-day time frame. It's, I think, been the worst performing model. So we do have to take that into account at the moment. The GM has performed a bit better, but is slightly still behind the ECMWF, which we'll have a look at in a minute, and it does something a little bit more interesting, some would say. Now this high pressure does linger over top of us towards the weekend from the GEM, and it moves to our northeast, and we pull in that northerly wind. It does go cold once again, but eventually we do start to pull in that southwesterly more towards the end of next working week. So it does do something similar to the GFS, but it takes a lot longer for it to evolve. We stay cold for a good 3 or 4 days there, probably just cold and frosty and dry before the southwesterlies do push in by around Wednesday, Thursday next week. So similar to the GFS, but not quite as progressive and not quite as harsh in terms of that breakdown. Still got that blocking towards Greenland, still trying to pull in a northerly flow, just those getting shunted out of the way by the low pressure in the Atlantic. Now the ECMWF, which I said, has got the better verification stats. It still could be wrong, but it's got better verification stats at the moment. It's producing something a bit colder. Now the high pressure moves up to our north towards the end of this week, and we pull in northerly winds. But what happens here is that low doesn't do anything, and we instead see high pressure still continue towards northern Canada, and we see sort of a mixed match of low pressure running to our south and very cold air heading in from our north, and we are in a very cold air mass, low pressure running into it. This will be a very cold, but also potentially very snowy sort of pattern here. There are times we could see temporary milder air masses push in, but as I said, that could introduce a lot of moisture and perhaps snow. Now again, I'm not saying this is going to happen. The ECMWF does have better verification stats, but of course it could be an outlier run, it could be wrong, but definitely suggesting something more in lines with a block and more in lines with cold weather for the first week of March. This is prolonged cold. This is a good 5 to 7 days of cold weather, widely low single digits, and perhaps widespread snow with this as well. Again, you can get the temperature deviation. All the cold air is getting pushed towards Iceland, Scandinavia, and towards Northern Europe in general. It'll be very interesting to see how this does evolve. If we do finish by looking at the ensembles, probably the best way to see the whole spread. Now we can only have a look at the midnight run for the GFS ensembles. The 6 o'clock run hasn't fully come out yet, and you can see it's cold for the next couple of days. Turns slightly milder with that high pressure build back over the top of us, but again the surface temperature is not recovering all too much. And then around the 4th, 5th of March we go much colder again. The majority of ensemble members have us down to -5 to maybe -8, which is cold, around as cold as it is now, maybe slightly colder than some of the runs, and coming from more of a northerly direction. And more widespread, it could be more widely colder for about 2 or 3 days. Then we see the operational midnight run climb back towards average and above average with some of the ensemble members. But others, including the control run, the thicker blue line, and quite a few ensemble members, keep us cold all the way to around the 10th, 11th of March, or even longer, more very prolonged cold spell, and some are very cold down to the -10 line or lower. Good 10 degrees below average. So there's a huge spread here. So all are going pretty much for a colder air mass for a time, but it's the longevity and the intensity of it is what is uncertain. And of course, in the longer term, we can see more precipitation spikes, indicating more moisture, potentially more snowfall, if that does happen in those colder air masses. But of course, we will have to see. Again, the dew points are generally around freezing for the foreseeable future for the midnight run. Again, indicating cold polar air masses, especially next week. You can see it dipping down to -2, -3, even colder than it is now. Again, showing a colder air mass. And if we look at the snow depth spikes, there are quite a few snow depth spikes. Nothing too major at this stage, but just showing you that a lot of the ensemble members, their precipitation is falling as snow even in London. Very interesting to see that. Again, not a forecast, but a lot of the ensemble members are producing snow-conducive air this time next week. Very interesting seeing that. We'll have to really keep a close eye on it. And then if we have a look at the ECMWF ensembles, again, you can see very similar. Cold at the moment, turning slightly milder for a couple of days. Then pretty much all runs, bar maybe 5 or so, so about 10% of the ensemble members. So 90% going down towards the -5 line or lower, including the operational run there. And then some keep it going, others climb it back up around the 9th of March, and that's where we see the huge divergence in those runs. So pretty similar from the GFS and the ECMWF ensembles today. They have been quite at odds recently, but today they are showing something very similar. cold definitely next week for a couple of days, potentially longer, and could go quite considerably cold down towards the -10 line from some runs, but others have that milder southwesterly pushing in, turning us more wet and windy in off the Atlantic, and others have us kind of in between, similar to that ECMWF run. Probably was more on the colder side, but kind of in between where low pressure does run in to that cold air, and that's where we could see potentially some snowfall. So yes, it is going to be turning colder once again next week. Similar sort of conditions to we have this week, potentially slightly colder, more widely, and then there could be more increased chance of winteriness around that and precipitation in the form of snow. Let's continue to look interesting, as I said, over the next couple of days and the next few weeks in general, as we do slowly head towards spring and, of course, into summer. So things are gradually going to be warming up, but for the time being, as I said, it's going to be pretty chilly. And if you're looking for any warm spring weather, not looking likely for at least the first half of March. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Make sure to stay safe out there and to stay wrapped up warm. It is going to feel cold out there. And I'll see you again for another video soon.